legislative session, a couple of things. First of all, a couple of our legislators, Representative Kirk and Representative Carlson, have other things this morning, so they won't be here, is my understanding. For those of you who are new, we want to make sure that they understand the certain ground rules. If you're going to ask a question, you have to line up at the podium over here, and you have 1 minute to ask a question. And ask a question means ask a question, not give it a speech. You just ask a question. When you have 15 minutes of your time, 15 seconds of your time is about to expire. In other words, you will have 15 seconds left. These fine young ladies over here are going to be our timers. And they will give you a notice that you have 15 seconds to go. And that will hopefully be pretty subtle. And then when your time is up, they're going to give you the time signal, which won't be subtle, okay? And if you keep on, and we're going to enforce this very strictly. And the same thing with the legislators. They have 2 minutes on their answers, and the ladies will give them the 15 and time's up signals appropriately. And we're going to enforce this very carefully. The reason being that I'm looking here, we have a full room. There's a lot of people who want to ask questions. If you talk your time, and I allow you to do it, which I'm not going to allow you to do, it means that other people will not be given a chance to ask their questions at the end of the period. Another thing which we're going to enforce is that we have a little thing called courtesy. They used to be saying in the U.S. Senate that if you knew that your opponent was stupid, or you thought your opponent was stupid, you would always refer to him as the distinguished senator, the distinguished and learned senator from Iowa. If you knew he was stupid, you would refer to him as the very distinguished and learned senator from Iowa. And so we would ask that you kind of apply that. Your opponent, if you're disagreeing with somebody, he may be wrong, he may be mistaken, but he's not evil. All right? So at this point, then, what we'll do is we'll open it up for the legislators. Start with Senator Dorsky for the simple reason that he's the senior member, and he's also the one closest to me that I can hand the mic to give his opening statement.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming out. Certainly look forward to your questions. I guess it's amazing you go to these forums and you completely forget what happened at the last forum, so you don't know what to talk about in the intervening time. So we're here to answer a lot of questions. So last week in Des Moines, there were two bills that I have no idea, where they were coming from and how they got there in the Iowa Senate, and vehemently opposed to both bills. So first of all was the tax bill that has some sort of a tax cut, mostly for upper income people, but it cuts the budget eventually by $1 billion. Now, we have about a $7.2 billion budget for the state of Iowa from the general fund, and then there's about $6 billion from the feds. And to cut it $1 billion, I don't know how sustainable that is. I don't think it makes any sense. Obviously, people up here will discuss that, but it just seemed to me that that big of a, without very little process, we did it in like 3 days. So that's a major problem, and we can discuss the details on that later. And then something called the heartbeat law that completely is against Roe v. Wade and is unconstitutional and doesn't work at all. And will also provide maybe the closing of the medical education training at the University of Iowa for OB-GYN. All sorts of major problems with that. So those two were just amazingly harmful pieces of legislation that we seemed to pass on party line votes in the Senate this last week. So that's not a good thing. We did move forward a couple education things. I think we did the 1% allowable growth, or that moved forward, and then also another bill dealing with transportation and some other inequities in K-12 education. So those moved forward. So on a positive note, and I have a visual aid here, we're talking about a school from my district, Iowa City West, that actually played. This is the first time ever in the 5A girls championship. 2 Iowa City schools were in it. Iowa City High, which Senator Bolcom represents that actually, and then Iowa City West, which I represent. And the undefeated team, Iowa City High, lost to the one who came in the tournament 16-7, Iowa City West. So pretty exciting, and that's one of the things we need to talk about. So anyway, and I think that Senator Lofgren will have some to talk about basketball too, so high school basketball. Anyway, look forward to your questions.
Thank you from the very distinguished senator. No, I take that in all kidding. I've always respected Senator Dvorsky. Always gotten along with him very well, and respect and thank him very much for his service to the Iowa Senate. Anyway, I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about the Iowa Working Families Tax Relief Act. This is not something that's really very sudden. Senator Randy Feenstra from West Central Iowa has been working on this for 6 or 7 years, quite a while really. But I'm sure, as Senator Dvorsky will tell you, that it's all about the majority party. For the past previous sessions, the Democrats controlled the Iowa Senate, and there were many 26-24 votes. It was all the Democrats against all the Republicans. I mean, the partisanship does bother me a little bit. You know, I'm not afraid of supporting a Democratic amendment or a Democratic idea. I'm sure Senator Dvorsky will realize, and he'd be the first, I think, to agree that good thoughts are not a one-party system. They come from both sides. And I've had bills that I thought were very well thought out that leadership will not move unless it's got a Republican senator's name on it. And that just bothers me. I don't think that's how politics is supposed to be. Politics overrules policy, and that's sad. I would like to see a lot more bipartisan effort on a lot of the bills. I'm very concerned with education bills and with health and human services bills. Those are 2 of the committees that I serve on, and I spend the majority of my time on that. So I would love to see much more working across the aisle, and I've worked on quite a few issues with Senator Mathis and Senator Reagan and Senator Bolton, and I respect and value their opinions and their perspectives. So, you know, I'm probably a little naive on this, but I would certainly like to see a lot more bipartisan collaboration on a lot of bills. But as Senator Dvorsky says, I don't want to take too much more time here, but the transportation equity bill was one that I think the Senate is in agreement with. We must equalize the funding of our students. When I've got a school district that has the lowest in the state transportation costs of getting West Burlington, absolutely the lowest in the state. And then I've got other districts like L&M and Wapello and Mediapolis, Columbus Junction, Danville, that have substantial costs of getting their students to the door. So that's an issue that I would like to continue to work on. And obviously I think Senator Dvorsky and I see eye to eye on that project. So I'll stop for now.
Everybody, thank you for being here. Just like Bob had mentioned, I'm real happy for the Muskies for qualifying for the state boys tournament. And of course, we're playing Iowa City West. So I will be at the game. I'm sure that Senator Dvorsky will be at the game, and probably all of us will be there actually. And if anybody does come up there and might be an opportunity to stop over by the Capitol, you're welcome to come by. But I would warn you, send a note in because there's meetings going on, but it would be good to see a lot of people up in Des Moines. So, but anyway, I might just review fast. I'm the chair of Economic Development Budget Sub. I'm on Education, Government Oversight, Veterans Affairs, Appropriations, the Vice Chair of Local Government. I have some interim committees I'm on. I'm on IPERS, the 411 Plan for Firefighters, System Retirement Plans, where we look at all the retirement plans, and I'm on the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Also, a lot of my time is spent, a lot of the budget work and everything too. So, but what's happening right now is we're trying to get bills through the Senate floor. You know, we raced around to get them out of committee. Now that's what we're working on. So we have bills we're sending over to the House. They have them sending over to us. So we're hoping that we might get done maybe first week of April, in that range.
Good morning, everyone. As the only House member, I want to say the Senate as a whole is very, very distinguished. No, that I give some bipartisan grief. This is actually going to be my last opportunity to be at a public, large forum like this with Senator Dvorsky. I'm not going to be here at the April one for work reasons, and I'm not going to be at the last Johnson County one because I'll be in North Carolina at a conference. And so I want to take this quick moment to use my opening comments to tell you a little bit about Senator Dvorsky from my perspective. When I first met him, I don't know if he even remembers this, but I was door knocking in my hometown of Wilton 2 days before my first election, and I see there's Senator Bob Dvorsky. I was like, oh shit. And all the folklore I'd heard was that he was this, and I don't think you knew you had this nickname, Senator, but he was known as the liberal lion so I came in, you know, having this scared reputation of here we're going to be clashing and fighting and not getting along at all. And I just want to take this opportunity to tell all of you that over the last 6 years, he's someone that I've come to call a personal friend. We fought many battles together, from performance-based funding, killing that awful bill, getting through pet protective orders, elder abuse laws, even so much as getting water piped into Solon. And I just want to take this public moment to let all of you know that in either party, House or the Senate, there has never been a more knowledgeable, a more ethical, or someone with more integrity than Senator Bob Dvorsky. And if we can all just give a round of applause. Thank you.
And we'll now proceed to questions.
Hello, my name is Nathaniel. I'm the Vice President of the MCC Young Democrats here at MCC. First off, I'd like to thank you all for what you do. It's wonderful. And secondly, I'd like to ask how you guys all stand towards college funding and how that's going to go.
Thanks for the question, and I appreciate you guys being here and being active. The House has not yet passed a de-appropriations bill on purpose, and that is because the increase in funding, due largely to the federal tax plan, has been increasing at a much larger rate than we anticipated. The March Revenue Estimating Conference comes out March 9th, and so we have made a decision as a House. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that, but I have now. We are going to wait to do a de-appropriations bill until after that Revenue Estimating Conference comes in. We have lowered the cut to the community college to $500,000, and I am very optimistic that we are going to be able to make a de-appropriations bill, which we are legally required to repay those funds from last year, as small as possible, because there is a lot of positive growth. And if you look at Minnesota, they get their REC equivalent number before we do, and their recent estimate was higher than projected. Can't say that everything's going to be all rosy, but things are definitely in a better position this year than they were at this time last year.
Well, as far as the colleges go, we've been big supporters. Of course, I went to MCC and everything too. So I do agree with what you're doing. I didn't know that they're going to wait until after the 9th, but that makes sense. I mean, and I think that yeah, because we started up at 52 million, the Senate, then I think the House was, or the governor was at like 35, and then so we were kind of in the middle working through this thing. But once we see what the number is there, we'll kind of see where we're at and everything.
Well, I'm a graduate of Southeastern Community College. At the time, Burlington Junior College is what it was called at that time. So I don't think there's one of the four of us that does not support education. Education takes up 55% of the state's entire budget. So we do whatever we can to adequately fund. Just this morning at 8 o'clock, Naomi gave me a nice tour over here at the new Learning Center. It was fantastic. So we will continue to support education as much as we can.
I've supported education K through 12, Regents and community colleges my entire career, and I didn't graduate from Kirkwood, which should have been the community college in my area, but I did take a few interesting classes from there. But the approach right now in the Iowa Senate is enormous cuts into the Regents and community colleges. It's better in the House, but if we're able, indeed, if the REC comes in with a good number, if we don't have to de-appropriation, that would be great news for everyone. And then we'll have to focus on FY19, and I hope we don't do cuts there either, but who knows.
Thank you.
I'm Linda Kelty. 2 days ago, the heartbeat bill passed the upper chamber in a vote of 30 to 20 Republican favor. A doctor performing an abortion after her heartbeat's detected faces felony charges unless the mother's life is threatened. This intrusion on women's rights removes the choice in the face of knowing later in pregnancy of catastrophic defects that remove all quality of life for the child. This, in fact, in the face of increasing lack of support for medical care, supports a class war. This, in the face of supporting Second Amendment rights, indicates our representation is pro-birth, not pro-life. I'm ashamed of the hypocrisy that I continue to see. What will you do to protect the lives of the already born in the face of gun control?
Well, I've said many times, I believe in life at conception. I do believe that that child needs someone to speak for that child. You know, it is a difficult personal choice. I have a family member who gave up a baby her senior year in high school. And later on, she could not have children, so she had to adopt 2 children. You know, life is precious. Life is, well, I remember when my father was on life support and there was no coming out of it, and told the doctors make him comfortable and turn off the machines, and when that line goes flat, life is over. But I believe life starts with a heartbeat, and I voted accordingly.
When I first ran for the House in 2010, the first thing I did is make some brochures, and the first item on there was pro-life. My family is pro-life. I've supported pro-life. I support that bill. I'm okay for the House, working on the bill. If maybe they need to work on some adjustments or some sort of compromise, because that's what we do in Des Moines, is we do kind of work together. But I am pro-life, and I will always be pro-life.
The House will be actively talking about what to do with that bill next week. I have problems with criminalizing physicians. I don't believe that is, I believe, and I'm arguing on behalf of the pro-life crowd. I say that if you want to give the courts an easy way to toss it, then criminalize or de-license someone for doing an act that is currently legal. And so from a legal perspective, we're looking at that in the House. As the first cousin of someone who has a severe birth defect, I find it insulting to say that we should be able to pick and choose who gets to live based on whether they're going to be defective or not. I find that argument to be incredibly insulting. And as far as gun control, I don't believe I have enough time in this question to answer it without getting tired. I'm sure we're going to have another gun control question, because I'm happy to answer it at length. I just want to caution to people that it is really easy to say vote for gun control and we're all going to be safe. I think that if you look at what happened in Florida, that is an incredibly false sense of security, because government at every single level systematically failed to identify and prevent something that was absolutely preventable and identifiable.
I guess I did mention this in the opening statement, that, I would be called an old-style pro-choice person, and I think even if you want to be pro-life, this is way radical situation. This is beyond the pale. I mean, clearly it's unconstitutional. There would be a court case right away and all that. So I hope the House really looks at it and deals with it. And to shut down medical education at the University of Iowa, I mean, that makes no sense at all. This is really a dangerous bill, and I hope people really pay attention to it, and I hope you'll talk to your House members and get some of this straightened out. It's way radical, off the edge legislation.
Mr. Paulson?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good morning, Don Paulson, I live in 76 Township. Senate File 2383, the Let's Turn Iowa into Kansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana bill, passed the Iowa Senate. We're already handing out about $600 million a year to corporate giveaways, and this bill, according to Representative Jacoby, would hand out $760 million more, and plus a huge tax break for millionaires. Is this bill just a Trojan horse to make Governor Reynolds' equally bad bill seem reasonable?
Don, as I said in my opening statement, I think that's, $1 billion cut, it's 200 million this year, or fiscal 19, I think, and then 1.1 billion eventually. So, yeah, I think this is more of a political document than it is a real document, because I don't think the House is going to deal with it. The governor has her plan, and I think the House is looking at the governor's plan. So it's kind of another one that's very, very radical and dangerous again.
Well, just like on the heartbeat bill, a lot of times legislation I have discovered, it comes out as a statement. There's compromise that comes out of the House or out of the Senate, goes over to the other chamber, and there's further compromise. It's seldom the final version until it actually passes down to the governor's office. And again, this year, what was there, like 2,500 bills, I think, issued, and they're brought up for consideration, or submitted at least, in the Senate, and probably about the same number, or even a little bit more in the House side. So there's a lot of things that come out as a statement. And there's a lot of that political gaming, especially in an election year. A lot of that goes on, and I don't think that's behooving to either side as far as the process. It clouds the issue, in other words.
The Tax Foundation has us ranked 40th, and it's not just on our tax liability. I've mentioned many times we kind of pay about average, but it's very complex. So we're trying to simplify things, and we are looking at all the incentives too. We've had a lot of people that said you need to look at incentives. So we've sunsetted some of those, but when we sunset them, the only thing is I don't think people say, well, at that time they're stopping, because what it really does, it forces us into reviewing them to make sure they're doing what we want them to be doing too. So, but I will, I think I mentioned this last time, but Debbie Durham, who's is the director of the Economic Development Authority, she talks about this. She says, we don't have to be best as far as our tax situation in Iowa, we just need to be competitive. So if we could just move up at least maybe in the middle, I think that would be helpful to create jobs in Iowa.
Well, Don, I can always count you to be to the left of the far left, so I do appreciate the consistency. I am so sick and tired of hearing that Republicans are responsible for the corporate giveaways. 53, that is the number of the current tax credits that passed the Ways and Means Democratic Chairs Committee. 49 is the number of the times that he voted for them, which is 87%. You don't know how many tax credits and R&D tax credits passed the Republican legislature last year? 0. So the problem was not some far-right conspiracy theory peddled by Governor Reynolds. This is an issue that we all own, and in the House, I think we're going to take a look at both the governor and the Senate's tax bill. Doing nothing is not an option. Federal deductibility is going to be an automatic increase of $131 million to lower and middle-class income taxpayers if we do nothing. So I think the House is going to take a look at both plans. We're going to be smart about how we do this, but just calling us Kansas and those cute talking points really does absolutely nothing.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Karen Cooney, and I'm from Muscatine. The FBI analyzed 160 cases of active shooters between 2000 and 2013. Not one was stopped by a concealed carry permit holder who was not active duty military, security guard, or a police officer. 21 were stopped by unarmed citizens. Now, just so you know, before I ask my actual question, I very, very recently, after working for 32 years for the city government, I now am a substitute teacher. So I did my first time in a grade school, and I had a wonderful time with it. But I will tell you, when I walked into that building, because of what has happened, it automatically made me think about what was going on. My question to you is, will you commit to not arming teachers?
I will not commit to taking that option away, absolutely not. I don't understand the concept behind the theory that, and I know you didn't ask this question specifically, but I think it relates, that if you pass a law, a criminal with ill intent or hate in his heart will be like, oh shucks, you know what? I was gonna go do this heinous crime, but you know, gosh darn it, the legislature passed reforming section code 6.25B, so darn it, I can't do that now. That doesn't happen. It just simply does not happen, and I have zero credibility in the FBI, because that individual, that monster down in Florida, was tipped off to them 3 times. They even failed to notify the field office in Miami. I'm not asking for input.
Excuse me, Ms. Cooney, we don't allow that.
The FBI failed at every single level. He advertised himself as school shooter. He brandished a gun on Facebook. When you do those things, your First and Second Amendment rights are gone. He should have been automatically committed. He should have been forcibly confiscated all of his weapons. And so when you quote the FBI in relation to guns, that doesn't mean a damn thing to me.
You know, we've been talking about this for about 8 years. When I first started in the House, we talked about, well, maybe we should have the principal have a gun, that type of thing. And so it kind of toned down for a while, and now we're discussing again. I would like to at least have some conversation about that and see if maybe, you know, if we did it in a safe way and we looked at the procedures and everything. I'm not on the committee that would work on that as far as judiciary. That's normally where those bills go through. But again, I'm open to discuss it. Am I absolutely, yes, automatically, yes, we're going to have somebody? Well, let's talk about how it's going to be done, the procedures and everything.
I am not an NRA member. I don't own a handgun, but I strongly support the right of every citizen to protect themselves and their family with the possession of a handgun, if they so choose, and if they do not have a criminal background or do not have a felon against them. As far as arming our teachers, our administrators in our schools, I think that's the decision of the local school board. I would not, I don't want to encourage it, but I think it's a measure that should be considered at each local entity, whether they feel it's pertinent to their situation. I think ignoring the problem doesn't make it go away. You know, there are people with mental illnesses that are going to create these heinous crimes, and you just hope and pray that it's not your school or your kids or grandkids there. So I do understand. First of all, I want to thank you for taking on a second career here and helping our kids.
To your question, I don't think it makes any sense to arm teachers. I mean, there's all kinds of irrefutable statistics saying the more guns you have, the more violence there is, the more deaths there are. I mean, that's just what it is, despite all this baloney. I guess from this you can see all the other answers there. Nothing's going to happen in Des Moines, or if something happens, it won't be good. Dealing with gun control, so somehow we got to take it beyond us, and maybe there is hope. On the bottom of the Press Citizen papers showing the walkout North Central Junior High and North Liberty, as well as Liberty High School. The students there decided to protest. So I would hope that maybe that generation can figure out new ways to deal with this. I mean, we talk against each other and past each other and everything about Second Amendment things, and we don't deal with anything real. You know, talking about blaming it on the shooter. Obviously, the shooter's the one that did that, but you can also blame it on the system, and you blame it on you know, people with mental illness. Well, let's not fund mental health, then. That makes a lot of sense. Really? So, and because they didn't have a background check, let's not fund the background check program, which we do. Don't fund it adequately either. Or let's not have enough FBI. That makes a lot of sense too. So all these things contribute to it, and we seem unable to have any kind of dialogue or decent talk in this. So I would hope that maybe the next generation can figure this out, because we just can't seem to come up with real answers here to real problems.
Thank you, sir.
This is Chris Clark from Muscatine. I was reading Senator Lofgren. I read your newsletter. So I have a question about that. Is you saying that you're going to fund that tax bill? Excuse me. By eliminating or reducing tax credits for special interest groups in Iowa. I'd like to know what those special interest groups are.
Well, like Bobby said, there's a lot of different credits out there. So, and I think there's 400 lobbyists in Des Moines or something like that. Is that right, Bobby? Something like that. So, 600.
Used
So,
to be a-
you know, it's hard to keep track of their names and everything. Honestly, you run, you know, you get it.
But do you know who they are?
Huh?
Do you know which ones you're going to defund?
Actually, if you looked at the bill, there's actually a group, I guess it's kind of a little task force that's been set up, that they're gonna go, well, and you gotta remember too, it's past the Senate, we got a long ways to go, but there's actually a task force set up to go ahead and review them. Now, you've been sending emails to me for years now about
yeah.
those, so I would think you'd be kind of happy about this. So, and again, but there's things like the historical credits and everything that people like, and I do too. So, but I think what it does, it gives an opportunity, at least we need to take a look at everything and see if it's working or not. And there's a lot of, like the earned income tax credit, actually that was increased with the bill. There's a lot of good things about that bill. The average taxpayer saves about $1,000. But the credits, and actually we're hoping that if we lower the amount of the credits down, that, you know, that will take care of some of the amount we have to come up with to do the bill. But always remember, a lot of numbers are static, and we're trying to create this environment in Iowa that businesses want to come here and people want to be located here. One thing in that bill too, it doubles the exemption for retirement pension money, because right now it's $6,000 for a single return and $12,000 for a joint, and it doubles that. And it's amazing how many people are losing to the 7 states that don't have state income tax. So I would just say that we would be diligent and take a look at all those credits. I'm sure I'll hear a note from you sometime, you know, about which ones you like and you don't like too.
I would do that, but.
I think we should have,
Please go back and forth.
I think we should have real,
This is another thing that I get emails on that is really devoid of the other side. I hear a lot about the research and activities tax credit, which I believe absolutely is out of control in terms of growth and needs to be capped. That is the check that the states writes to corporations for doing research. That is $48,837,134. Since 2011, it has grown by 4.2 million, which is 8.5%. That would be what traditionally Democrats would say is a Republican corporate giveaway. Well, let's talk about the tax credit, which costs the state a significant more amount of money, which is experiencing far more growth, that would be put in the Democratic priority column. That is what Senator Lofgren referred to, and that is the earned income tax credit. A bill, a credit that goes towards those with predominantly low incomes that still gives them the right to have a tax refund. That is a liberal sacred cow. Now, the research and activities credit, just a reminder, $48 million, the big evil corporate giveaway. EITC, $69,404,000, a growth of 60% in the same time as the R&D. So if we want to have a tax credit discussion, I'm willing, but both sides are going to have to put their sacred cows on the chopping block.
Well, the historical tax credit is something that I think was reduced from 45 million to 35 million, and then a sunset period, 40 with the amendment. 40 with the amendment, you know, and then sunset in 2025, I believe. So, you know, I'm sure in the old river towns, Burlington, Muscatine, Clinton, and Davenport, etc. You know, we've used those funds quite a bit for our downtown renovations and improvements. So, you know, some of these tax credits work very well. Others, yeah, okay, you know, we can probably do without that one. So, you know, and our needs and our wants and our desires change over time. So, again, I think review is obviously very good and essential for these programs. And like I said, there's nothing in the language that I have read that says that they will be permanently discontinued. So, you know, in 2 years, the economy might turn around. Corn prices, you know, we could have bottomed out a year or so ago, and let's hope things are better and we can reinstitute some of these credits or initiatives for our local communities to do their own projects.
I guess I'm conflicted on which way to go, so I'll go 2 different ways here. Because we're old guys, we confirmed here about the earned income tax credit, which I said it was an initiative from Ronald Reagan, which it was, but Walter said Milton Friedman came up with it.
That is correct.
Yes, it was a big conservative economist. But it was really an initiative of Ronald Reagan. So earned income tax credit actually does work. And it's one of the best economic development stimulus tools there is out there, you know. And you can show all kinds of statistics how this helps low-income people and everything else, and doesn't really hurt the tax code that much. But it's not a liberal sacred cow unless Ronald Reagan's a liberal. So it really is. It really is. That's something that has actually worked, and we got to look at it. We increased it several years ago. I think Senator Volkman and I worked on it in 2007 or 8 or something like that. But that's one of the ones. Just like all the rest of them, ought to be analyzed to see how they work. And I think the earned income tax credit will stand up to that scrutiny. There's others, I don't know. The research credit, as they said, I mean, it gets a lot of flack for the small credit it is, but we don't do anything about it. We just talk about it. I mean, you could have at least said, okay, you're going to cut everything else. Why don't you cut that 5% or something? Just say that you're paying attention, other than talk. So everything's just been talk. And this bill had 2 days of discussion, so there wasn't even any opportunity for Democrats to bring up any of these things. So hopefully it goes through the House. There'll be discussion of all the tax credits that are out there, as well as looking at the brackets. And federal deductibility, getting rid of federal deductibility has been a big thing that Democrats have been talking to for 25 years. So that ought to be something to look into also, and more than 25. And as Bobby pointed out, Representative Kaufman, you know, they're going to look at that, and they've been talking about doing that for a long time. Because people, and this just seems weird to me, but apparently corporations and others can't figure out our tax system, that it shows more than it really is with the federal deductibility.
Good morning, my name is Shelley, serve the oath. I am a veteran of the United States Army. And we have been celebrating this week in Iowa about Iowa being #1 in the nation, but I have a sobering statistic to talk about. We are also #1 in the nation for veteran suicide. We are third in female veteran suicide. So 20% above the national average, with 75 veterans confirmed by the VA in 2014 to PTSD. But there's hope. Monday, you guys will probably be seeing House File 2350, and the Veterans in Crisis Care Act, something that I wrote, House File 482. We're working on having that being added as an amendment. So this is something Senator Lofgren and also Senator Dvorsky that maybe you, if you would be willing to sponsor when you see it. It's a mental health bill projected location of hold measure addresses suicide at the school level to be amended and expand the protocols to all clinic and ER admissions of patients who are in distress or suicidal. So what we're looking at doing is adding that in and expanding it so that we're helping all Iowans who are facing suicide and crisis. So my question to you would be, would you please be supportive, and when you see this come across and you see this language for that 24-hour hold, please be helpful. Thank you so much.
As a father of a current military, a son who's currently serving in the military, I certainly appreciate your comments. I think it's an issue. The PTSD syndrome is real. Treatment and therapy is essential, and you know, I for one will continue to work on that measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also appreciate your comments too. In the Education Committee, we actually did pass a bill for training for teachers, although some school districts have already been doing training for suicide, but we did pass that. And I'm not really sure where it is at the House, but they're a duplicate bill maybe. But so I understand what you're doing. But anytime somebody brings something, I always want to take a look at the language, but I'm happy to take a look at it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a very good amendment, Shelley. I look forward to supporting it.
I appreciate that.
Shelley, what's the bill, the House File 2350?
Yes, sir.
And then you were talking about adding the amendment that's House File 482?
Yes, sir, and it's a 24-hour hold, and so the Hospital Association is behind it. The lobbyists have been working on it, and so I'll actually be in Des Moines on Monday, so I'll be up there and I'll call you out and talk to you about it.
There seems to be a little bit of momentum dealing with mental health and maybe hopefully some of these suicide prevention things too, so hopefully we could move in that direction.
Yes, sir, thank you so much.
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm Nadine Brockert. I'm 4th Ward City Council for the City of Muscatine.
Excuse me, before you start speaking, Ms. Brockert, after you get done with your, or the legislature's done with your question, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So the people up standing there, if you want to sit down, you'll be recognized in the order you're there right now. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. My question primarily has to do with cutting taxes, and then the backfill that has been given to cities since the rewrite of the property tax bill in 2014. There is now discussion of cutting it to 2/3 for fiscal year 18-19 and eliminating it altogether for fiscal year 19-20 or 2021. You're killing us, folks. Come on. We have already sent our budget for the city for fiscal year 18-19 to the auditor. And between this possible cut and also the ATE controversy, I'm wondering how you all stand and what you plan to do.
Well, I would vote against, as an old city council member in Coralville, 7 years, I would vote against any of that. As I understand it, one of the bills was talking about a 3-year thing where you cut 50 million the first year, 50 the second, 3 years. Oh, it's Senator Shelgren's bill, I guess. But I don't know if those are live rounds or not. But there's been talk of doing it that way. And, you know, we're reneging in our promise to cities and all that, and home rule, and all those things that, you know, I would be opposed to that. What's ATE, though? I guess I don't know.
The ATE is the automated traffic enforcement.
Oh.
The cameras.
Red light cameras, yes.
Red light cameras, yes.
Traffic cameras. Well, I voted against that bill also, so.
I always felt the traffic cameras were a public safety issue. You know, I've been nailed going around Muscatine before. But what disturbed me most about that was that the cities were only keeping like 40% of the revenue generated from the fines.
I'm not sure the percentage. Sir.
Yeah, I mean, it was a moneymaker for the people who put up, the private company that put up the cameras. And it was a big issue in Des Moines, big issue in Cedar Rapids. I've had Senator Dvorsky fly by me on the interstate. So No. I would like to see traffic cameras on I-80. You know, I mean, it's just crazy. That I avoid I-80, let me tell you. As far as the backfill goes, what I've been told, like I said, I'm not on Commerce. I think that would probably come through Commerce or state government. But I think the backfill is a take away, give back program. You know, where we take certain funds away from you and then we give you some back. I mean, that just makes the issue much more complex. I would just assume not take away as much, and therefore, you know, I mean, just let's make it real. Doesn't need to be this movement of the money back and forth.
I was in the House when we passed it. I remember the conversation really well, so, and there was a lot of concerns. But, and last year when they wanted to get rid of it, I was very vocal in my caucus that, you know what, we know what was said back before. And so we fought, we got it, we kept it. I think Bobby did the same thing, I believe. And I'll just tell you what my opinion is now, because it's getting to the point where there is a lot of support to get rid of it. And the reason I mentioned that Senator Shelgren put the bill in is just because, you know, only 10% of bills pass. So, and he puts a lot of bills in, that type of thing. I would like, and I understand as far as the certification of your budget too, because I've been telling people up there this. I said, you realize that? I said, that's a bad situation. So if I would rather see it go into effect in 20, I'd rather have it be, instead of 3 years, be 5 years. But I don't know what will be worked out. I mean, there could be some sort of compromise on it. But I appreciate your concern too. I understand why.
Fiscal year 18 and 19 are off the table as far as I'm concerned, because people have been certifying their budgets, but the backfill was never meant to be forever. And so I've been telling my city councils to begin planning for that, and I support what Senator Loughran said, that a slow phase out would be something I would support to minimize. But it's a difficult conversation to have when 95% of the cities have reached the equilibrium point of the revenues being exactly where they were pre-cut. That makes it a more palatable discussion in Des Moines when you've got cities that are at 112, 115% of their revenues pre-cut now with the backfill. As far far as traffic cameras, it doesn't make it very popular in Muscatine, but I'm the floor manager of the bill in the House. And I have been moved tremendously by our Sheriff, C.J. Ryan, who made the most compelling case I've ever seen in a 2-page document as to why this is a money-making scheme by a private company, not constitutional, and completely ruins the thought of an investigation. When a police officer approaches a car, they check to see whether you're intoxicated, to check whether you have your insurance expired, your driver's license expired, whether you have a warrant, whether you're acting suspicious. This is just an out-of-state camera taking a picture, taking 60% of the money and calling it safety. So if anyone wants that 2-page document, I'd be happy to distribute it to you, but full disclosure, I am the floor manager of the bill.
Thank you.
And we'll now have a 5-minute break. We'll convene at 9 minutes before 10, as per that clock. Okay, we'll go ahead and start at your questions. Our northern neighbors here are slowly returning to the table here.
My name is Paul Thielman. I'm a 42-year resident of Muscatine. I'd like to draw attention to yesterday's editorial in the Quad City Times with reference to Senate File 2281, the heartbeat bill, and the tax overhaul bill 2383. The Times said the Iowa Senate went off the rails. And I would only paraphrase this, that on our national level, we're hearing comments about national Republican policy as the Republican Party now being a threat to constitutional order. We've heard today about how only 10% of the bills that are submitted pass, and essentially our senators, Republican senators here, seem to think that we should rely on the Iowa House to reduce the extremism that is these two bills that I've mentioned. Why are you taking such extreme positions that have opposition to our Constitution, and would, in Grover Norquist's words, drive essentially government to minimize government to the point where we could drown it in a bathtub? I find your positions extreme, and I don't see any virtue.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Well, the heartbeat bill, I don't think is, it will probably go to the courts, and it'll probably be sit there. I don't think it'll go very far, but I think it was a statement bill, and I have no problem making that statement. The tax reform bill, I think we've seen over the last 6 or 8 years of where excessive spending and excessive overpromising has led us. 6 years ago we had $900 million in our state reserves. They're gone today. We just cannot continue to overpromise, overspend as far as a taxing body goes, the ultimate taxing body in the state here, obviously. So I think it was time to look at things differently, time to do new measures, a new philosophy. My intent with those bills is I'm going to vote for something that I have the intentions and the belief that it will grow the pie. We can't cut the pie in any smaller pieces. We've already cut it down as much as we can. So we've got to grow the financial pie. And I think the Tax Reform Act will do that in the years ahead.
I think the Quad City Times editorial board, they're off the rail too. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They have been so negative on Muscatine over and over and over. There's not really fairness. You think in journalism that you try to be kind of fair and kind of look at the information, but I think they kind of twist everything. So I was in Des Moines at, there was somebody from the Quad City Times that was there, and I in fact, they said they were going to talk to me sometime. I said, well, I said, keep that in mind. I said, there's two sides to every story. And also on the question, we do have 3 branches of government, and so I just, I know what the Senate, sense feelings are and stuff. It's just that we know that when you have more people, you have more ideas and you have a different conversation. Because I've been in the House before and now I'm in the Senate. So that's why we bring it up, that when it goes over the House, we just want to be fair to realize that they have thoughts and ideas on bills too.
Well, during the break, Jeremy Pickard had said that he's unclear on where I stand on the issues and need to not be so shy. So I'll continue that with my thoughts that I think Senator Laughlin was being way too nice when he called the Quad City Editorial Board off the rails. They're a bunch of political hacks with no objectivity. I've never seen such crappy journalism than is the Quad City Times Editorial Board. So anything they say, I'm probably going to automatically be against it. The federal tax bill is working. I know that's not popular with people that don't want it to be, but the federal tax bill is working, so I don't think the constitutional argument applies to that. But as far as the House tax bill, we are going to be prudent. We're going to look at tax credits. We're going to look at federal deductibility, and we're going to look at giveaways. The Senate does their work. The House does our work, and the governor does her work. At the end of the day, we all have to reconcile things, so I'm not going to answer to their Senate bill just like they're not going to answer to ours. We're all going to answer to the final product, which is probably at least 30 days away from being final. Thank you for the question.
Hi, my name is Linda Smith.
Excuse me, Senator Gorski would like to say something, and I'm not going to shut him up.
Thank you. I haven't seen the Quad Cities Times editorial, but I need to read it, I guess. So I guess unfortunately, one of the things now, if you don't like somebody's editorials, then you do a little character assassination, or in this case, you know, the newspaper assassination. So anyway. I hope the House will look at the tax bill and all that, but one thing I do want to straighten out, and this is one of those old guy things, I was fortunate to have been appropriations chair for 12 years, I think from 2004 to 2016, and to sort of imply this was all Democratic control is not even close. We were tied for 2 years, the Democrats were in control for 4 years, and for 6 years, the Democrats had control of the Senate, Republicans, the House, and the governor. So everyone's culpable in all those things for all those years, and kind of to say it's one party or another is totally wrong based on the facts. If you want facts.
And now I'd like you to ask your question.
Thank you. I am Linda Smith, and I have lived here. My ancestors have lived here. My great-grandparents are just buried a gully away from me, my backyard. And Senator Lofgren has a good idea of how much my children mean to me and how much my grandchildren mean to me. And I have a daughter-in-law that teaches school in Cedar Rapids. I have a grandchild in school in North Liberty. And I have
Excuse me, you have 15 seconds, you ask your question.
I have 3 in Muscatine, and I want to know specifically, what are you all doing about their safety? There have been 12 shootings in Muscatine, in the United States. 12 school shootings this year alone. Thank you.
Well, I think, you know, school shootings are horrendous, obviously, but we've also had church shootings, movie theaters. You know, we've had a variety of where people with mental illnesses, you know, think this is their way to quote fame. You know, I have a problem with that, but you know, school is where we send our children, our grandchildren. We hope that they're safe environments. We have to do everything we can to make sure that it is as safe as possible. I have absolutely no problem at all with local school districts making that local decision on if they wish to allow their principal or any of their staff to carry a sidearm with proper training to safeguard the safety of our children in our schools.
In the Education Committee, we worked on kind of a security bill recently, and I don't know if the House has a similar type of a bill too, just some procedures and everything. And of course, kind of obviously, we talked about how we can't like have them notify all the parents the whole plan, because if you did that, the shooter would know the plan. So pretty obvious things.
Right.
But so that is a bill that's being worked on. And I appreciate how much you love your family, and I love mine too. My kids are all here, so we all care about safety and everything for our family and our kids.
Thank you for the question. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think there are multiple things that we can do. There is a certain percentage of our schools that do not have the active shooter training. There is a bill that passed the Senate, I believe, that's coming to the House that I support. There are things we can compromise on background checks, on funding mental health, on someone that commits domestic violence being forcibly having their guns confiscated, as far as I'm concerned. The second you put a gun on Facebook and brandish it and call yourself school shooter, as far as I'm concerned, you have waived your First and your Second Amendment rights. A police officer should immediately be at your house. You should be committed. All of your guns should be taken from you, period. So I think there's some compromise to be had. But I want to remind people that societal awareness is the #1 thing that has prevented, or lacking in preventing, of all this to happen. Let's go from the top bottom. The FBI was tipped off 3 times to the Florida shooter. They did nothing. The Sheriff's Department was tipped off 4 times. They did nothing. The Florida Department of Corrections actually had a meeting with him, and the person that could have signed off on confiscating his guns called him sane, even though he had all those weapons and all of the things that he posted on Facebook. And then finally, he had friends that were tipping people off. So I agree that there's comprehensive things that we can do together, but societal awareness broke down at every single level, and that's the biggest thing I think we can do.
You're absolutely correct. And we need a good hotline.
We don't allow back and forth. Ms. Hahn. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Senator Dvorsky, I didn't try to shut you off this time.
All right.
Okay.
I guess what we don't need to do, which we have done, is either cut funding to K through 12 or not increase it by much. Cut funding to the city so we don't have additional police and that kind of thing, which we're talking about doing. Cut funding to mental health, which we've done in the past, and we're now 50th or 49th in Iowa on mental health funding. Don't do background checks. Don't do any common sense gun laws, which we've done. All those factors, and then sort of blame everything on one or two things. So clearly we're not getting it done, and I think the only answer is maybe in the next generation or two where people can actually sit down and come up with something useful.
Okay. Now.
Hello, I'm Catherine Hahn. I spoke with you guys last month about Medicaid and what's happening with the MCOs and the privatization. What has happened since that time is we found out that our son's rate to support him in the home, that this community bill has been cut by 36% once United Healthcare took over. And I was called to a meeting with our provider. United Healthcare was invited, and I was invited to discuss the issue. And United Healthcare canceled the meeting because I was not allowed to be there. They will not talk with the parent or a member or guardian. They said it's between the provider and things, but I have since reached out. Gary Carlson has been trying to help me as well. And United Healthcare still has not spoken with anybody, and DHS has not reached out back to me either. This is of concern to me, obviously, personally, because this community built that home for our medically fragile people. And I don't know where we go from here, because if he ends up over in Glenwood at the State Resource Center, it's going to cost all of us twice what it's costing to take care of him here. And professionally, I work with families like this, and across the board, the MCOs are denying, all across the board, kids' ability to get adaptive equipment that they need to function. So I guess I want to know where we're headed.
Thank you very much for your comments. The MCO mess is real. I've seen multiple instances of it. I'm sympathetic to your cause and your reason. Senator Mark Segabart is the chair of the Senate side on Health and Human Services. And he made a statement the other day that we have 50 senators, 100 representatives, and the governor. So we have 151 case managers. A lot of these MCO problems are being diverted to us and to try to get these resolved. I personally have taken care of a couple of them in Burlington where it was been accreditation or issues or whatever with the MCOs, but it still doesn't address the issue of reduction in funding, which further reduces services to those who need it. So it is a continuing mess. Director Foxhoven and Director Randall have assured us that fixes are coming. Well, I haven't seen any yet, and like I says, I'm very sympathetic to your cause, and I will do whatever I can to expedite those issues.
At the LSI, a director of last week, I don't know if they talked to you about it, that, so I know there's some staff people kind of working on the issue.
The MCOs need the message loud and clear. They work for us, not the other way around. Senator Dvorsky and I are working on what I'm hoping is a nose in the door exception with, I've talked about last time here with the village visit. And I believe that if we can crack that code of it's our way or the highway, that can open up the door for other exceptions. On the House side, our speaker has made it crystal clear. This is broken and needs to be fixed. DHS has said they're going to do it internally, and I have levied the threat, and I'll do it right here on television, that if they don't have it fixed, then I'm prepared to assemble a group that will vote with Democrats to fix it for them. And so I'm hoping they can do it administratively, so that it costs less money and it gets done quicker. But if they cannot fix this when it comes to tiered rates, the exclusions, the tier rate grades, all of that stuff needs systematically fixed. They need to do it, or we're going to do it for them.
We have to take care of our less fortunate. That's the bottom line.
I hope everyone's helping you with that. I assume that there's a lobbyist for United Healthcare. I assume somebody's talking to him, but we'll see. I will if nobody else will. Just let me know. So anyway, this brings up one of the duties that being a member of the Iowa Senate you have that the House doesn't, and that's confirmation. So Mr. Foxhoven is up for confirmation, the head of DHS, and I met with him twice now, and maybe I'll have a meeting with him again. It is fascinating, though. I mean, he's talking about how he actually sat down with MCOs and told them no for the first time ever, which I can believe that, because under the Branstad administration, they did whatever they wanted to. There was virtually no oversight. We tried to have some oversight by the legislature, and the governor's office was then under Branstad was vetoing and all that. At least Governor Reynolds and Mr. Foxhoven said he pushed this to have her say the mistakes were made, which obviously they have been. And hopefully, it's really hard to determine, you know, whether or not he's adequate to the job and he's able to move things forward and says he's doing this. I have heard from some others, so if anyone out there has some opinions on Mr. Foxhoven, I'd be happy to talk to you about it and how we move forward with that. I think he's a very well-meaning gentleman who's trying to get something done, but I mean, there's enormous messes in DHS, and I don't know if he can clean it up or not. And Mr. Randall is one arrogant bureaucrat. But having said that, we need to make sure we work with him and see if we can get something done. And the village community, it's in Representative Kaufman, my district over by West Branch. It's kind of an ideal situation the way they operate. All kinds of state-of-the-art things they're doing and all that. And if they don't deal with them, then I don't think there's hope for DHS.
Hi, my name is Jamie Burks. I live in Bloomington Township and teach at Louisa Muscatine Elementary. I'm a preschool teacher there. Recently, Senate File 2171 was passed with a 46 to 3 vote. This bill grants a 1-year teaching license to applicants who score below the 25th percentile on their licensure exam. Now, many professions have minimum competency exams, and I just don't understand why we'd want to lower the professional proficiencies for teachers. So I want to know, did you support it, or will you support it when it comes through to you, and why?
46 to 3, I was one of the 3 voting against it. It was myself, Senator Hogue, and I can't remember the third one. Anyway, because I'm a purist on that, I don't know why we would lower our. I do understand this is one situation that one senator brought up in one school. So instead of changing the whole system, we could have figured out some way to just deal with that person, I would have thought. But instead of lowering the standards for the whole system, we could have dealt with the one person there, or whatever. So 46 to 3, and I know in committee there were Senator Hogan. I voted against in committee also. So I think you're right.
I'll take notes. 17 Democratic senators did vote for it.
I guess I just didn't know why.
You know, standards, we all want the best. We expect our kids to succeed and our kids to do the best. We need the very best of our teachers. You know, and I don't perceive a teacher shortage to an extreme. Well, maybe that's because we're losing population. We're not gaining at a substantial rate. I think the statistics I have seen in the last 10 years, we have 2% more students, 12% more teachers, and 20% more administrators. 20% more administrators for 2% more students. There's an issue that I think needs to be addressed.
I had a few superintendents that were concerned about it. I mean, they support the bill. So I think they thought it would be helpful and all that. So I think that's the reason that people voted for it, because they felt that the superintendents had a concern.
This is the first I'm hearing of it. I have no idea, but I will look into it for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, check it out.
Mark Patton from Wilton. Thank you all for your service. I know it's not easy to walk in parades and go to chicken dinners and do all those things. A lot of nights, takes a lot of time. It's a two-part question. The first part is, before we consider tax cuts, have we backfilled the rainy day fund and the other last 2 years when we cut agencies in the middle of the year?
The backfill from 2 years ago has been fully paid back with this year's budget. The $31 million transfer that Governor Reynolds did in the interim is on hold until March 6th when the REC comes out. I believe that we're going to be able to shrink the number of dollars we have to deappropriate down, and I'm throwing this number out there. This is me speaking, not my caucus. I'm just hoping we can get down into the single digits, where we were at 31 million. My analyzation of the tax receipt increase from the feds is I'm hoping that 31 can get down to 9, and we can further diminish the cuts that we legally are statutorily required to make. So March 6th, I'll have an exact answer for you, but a lot less than we initially proposed is my answer to that first part.
I agree with Bobby, but I want to mention that, you know, with this bill, if we can create jobs, you know, that solves a lot of problems for people. And actually, the unemployment rate's dropping down. In Muscatine, I think we have a negative unemployment rate because people are driving down here. So again, you got to remember, you know, we're hoping we have business want to come here and we create jobs, and we'll start to fill some of those gaps.
Yeah, I believe that the issue is being worked out and resolved and improving, is the way I'm looking at it. You know, the backfill and job creation and putting more money in consumers' pockets, I think are all positive steps, things that need to be done. I think I know the best way to spend the dollars. I don't need the government entities telling me how is the best way to spend our dollars or where they should go. So I'm a strong proponent in the local entities deciding what they need, local schools, colleges, etc. So I think things will be better.
I'm glad you're using your retirement usefully. Ask some questions. So one of the things we have is the 99% spending limitation. So the 1% goes and it rolls every year, and we replace the rainy day fund. So, so I don't quite understand some of this stuff about we have to rush to do this and that. Anyway, but I hope the REC comes in with a decent amount, and I think if there's anywhere close to balanced budget, the Republicans in the House will declare that it is balanced, and Dave Roeder will come up with some flim flam, and it will all be good. So for the deappropriation, so I think that's what's going to happen. Whether or not it's balanced or not, it's going to be within maybe 10 million or whatever, and they'll say it's balanced. So we won't do the deappropriation. We don't need to deappropriate. The thing about full employment in Iowa, though, is sometimes people are working 2 and 3 jobs. I mean, that's the problem. And you know, one of the things that they talked about cutting and this big tax thing, one of the things they cut was some of the 260E or F or one of those programs that actually one of the best programs we have to do training across the state to get a trained workforce, which everybody talks about. So we have to pay attention to what we're voting for and not pass some things that don't help us move forward.
And I'm going to leave with all the representatives there. It's not a petition, it's a pledge. Because I know for Muscatine, we're Iowa taxpayers, some people sign that pledge not to raise taxes. I'm not one.
We don't allow.
I said at the beginning I had 2 questions.
Well, except you're allowed 1 minute, and your minute is expired. If you want to give it to them, go ahead and give it to them.
Yeah,
But
basically.
we have other people who like to ask questions.
It basically says, I won't run for office if we don't meet our budget.
This lady's recognized.
Hey, Walter, I have another forum up in Davenport. It starts at 10:30, so I'm gonna have to scoot out of here. I hope you go up to the game on Tuesday, and if you do, you're welcome to come by the Capitol and see some of us.
My name is Nikki. I'm a domestic abuse therapist with Family Resources. We know that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men experience emotional, psychological, sexual, and/or physical abuse in their lifetime by an intimate partner. And in 2017, Victim Services endured a 25% state funding cut, while the average reduction across state government programs was 2.9%. So I want to know, will you commit to returning funding to reliable levels for survivor services programs?
Well, one of the measures that when we're in tough budget years is the Senate Democrats and I believe the House, the Senate Republicans and I believe the House Republicans have vowed that we'll take a 10% salary cut this year. You know, when money's tough all across, you know, we're going to get our work done in 90 days rather than 100 days. Therefore, the state of Iowa will pay their legislators to the tune of, what I've heard is $46,000 a day is what it costs when we're in session. $46,000. So if we're done 10 days early, that's $460,000. So we realize that things are tough, things are tight, and obviously domestic abuse, you know, is a, you know, it's a sin against society, it's a sin against the individual. So I will do what I can to hopefully find the funds. Let's hope that financial pie grows and we will have the money available that we can fully fund these programs. I'm just looking forward to the years when we've got full coffers and the money is there, that we can fund education, pass out 4% allowable growth, you know, fully fund our cities, our schools, our counties. I'm looking forward to those days.
Thank you for the question. This issue is very near and dear to my heart. As the executive director of the shelter over in Iowa City, as a constituent and a friend of mine, I fought like hell to get that down to 25%. It started off much higher than that. It's totally unacceptable. The bang for the buck that we get for funding both domestic abuse prevention, but also helping the victims, it's such a tiny part of the pie. It is unspeakable and unacceptable that we do not completely 100% restore those funds this session. And I want to repeat what I said on the gun debate. If you commit domestic violence, you are forfeiting your Second Amendment rights and your gun should be automatically confiscated, period.
Good question. For the life of me, I can't understand why it was even cut 25%. I mean, like you said, the average cut was about 3%. 25%! No reason whatsoever on that. And I'm on the justice system. I have no idea why they did that. I mean, the Republicans in the House and Senate actually did that. And one of the House members apparently has this vendetta against domestic violence. I don't understand that at all. Now, nobody understands where the funding comes from or anything. It's in the Attorney General's office, and money comes out of the Victim Services Fund, and then they get some federal funds. And so they're always playing these games of saying, well, you know, we got federal funds, we don't need to put state funds in. So the federal funds have been decreasing and the state funds have been decreasing, but the need hasn't been decreasing. And so 25% is totally unacceptable. I don't know why they're doing that at all. And in fact, it was so bad in the de-appropriate bill, I ran an amendment at the behest of the domestic violence lobbyist people that said that the Attorney General couldn't take it out of other funds. I mean, they weren't allowed to make a cut that they would have, if they got a cut in their department, they couldn't cut domestic violence. Now that's not the best solution, and Senator Snyder took it. So that's not the best solution, obviously. They need to fund it. But we'll have to go ahead at 19 and figure out what we're going to do there. But I don't understand that at all, and I just keep pounding on that. Of all the things you're going to cut, 25%, that makes no sense at all.
I'm Steve Leahy from rural Nichols, and we've been out there for the last 15 years. For the most part, it's been nice living. With the expanding pork industry in the last 2 years, 11 sites have been constructed 5 miles south of us, over 20 buildings. You can do the math. that's 50 to 60,000 head. I'd like to know what the legislature is doing to take a hard look at this industry and address the long-term impacts on pollution to the water, the land, and the air. Because I got the stink in my backyard from 5 miles away.
I think what we've been doing is cutting DNR further and further, so there's nobody to go out there and do inspections or anything else, and there's no legislation to do anything. So I'm sorry we're not doing anything, but we're just not. We're moving the other way.
There's an interesting development that's happened to a Burlington company, the Frank Miller Company. They've worked in conjunction with a Canadian firm for a process that will greatly reduce odors and the nitrates and the phosphorus that are dumping into our rivers and streams from the large cattle and hog production facilities. This system will be put up in a demonstration model, I believe the 21st of this month. They're setting up a test facility in Burlington. So I'm looking at this as obviously clean water, quality of life, hog and livestock holding areas are a quality of life issue. And it is something that needs to be addressed. This is a real positive thing. Meet me afterwards. Let me get your full name or your email or cell number, and I'll keep you posted on this process that's going. I see this as a great potential.
As a strong private property rights advocate, I would feel for your situation where you say you can smell it in your backyard from 5 miles away, and if there's some changes to local control to make it so that individuals that were there first aren't adversely affected, I would certainly support it. But I've just got to tell you that I live in rural Iowa as well. I live around lots of these buildings. I have to practically be on top of them to smell them. So I know your situation. I'm not saying you're wrong, but in my district, I don't have anybody complaining about that. We're asked to feed the world, and we got to make a choice. Is the idyllic way of going back to everybody's got 80 acres and 20 sows and 10 cows and everything's glorious will no longer feed the world. So the hard decisions that we have to make at the state and the federal level is, are we going to restrict hog barns and tell people no, they can't eat, or are we going to restrict them? So that's the discussion that I'm willing to have, but also I want to make sure to point out that there's two definite sides to this.
Thank you.
Dan Yoakum, West Denial.
Mr. Yoakum, Dale, when you get done, if we can get to you, you will be the last, and then the legislature will wrap up. So, go ahead.
I'm one of those radicals that values life, and so I do support the bill, and I hope you do work out the things that need to be worked out. I realize that it's not in the final stages yet. But as I listen to people, there's a lot of things that strike me as we're trying to address it at a state level when really it should be at a local level. If you want armed teachers, let the school board decide. If you want lower standards, let the school board decide. And we could go on down the list. I'd just like to get your input on how do you view that break between state and local, and are you willing to push stuff down to a lower level, closer to the people?
Yeah, I'm a radical when it comes to local control. It's why I sided with the schools on the start date. It's why I was the only Republican in the House that did not support the preemption bill last year. I am a passionate, fervent believer in our 10th Amendment on a federal level, that states are the best laboratories to do policy that's best for them. On the state level, I also believe that policies for towns and for cities and for local counties are best done at those levels. So I don't know if there's a specific question, but philosophically, I couldn't possibly be more in agreement with you. And there are a few exceptions you'll always try and jump me on. Yes, I also believe that right to local control stops when it impedes the constitutional rights of others. So philosophically, I'm with you with exception to those few times where it impedes on someone else's constitutional rights.
Local control is the best control for me. So kind of the way I look at it, whether it's cities, municipalities, counties, it's done much more effectively on a local level than in the state delegating. Education's a prime example. I don't want the Department of Ed telling you how to assess your teachers or when your start date should be. Those are issues that what's good for Muscatine might be different from Burlington and different from Iowa City. So let those local entities make their policy decisions.
Local control is a joke in Des Moines. People talk about local control, but then I could cite just 5 things today you talked about that we're taking away local control or home rule. In theory, the cities have home rule, which means they can do anything that's not prohibited directly by the state. Now, traffic cameras, that's one of them that they should have under home rule. So there's your local control. Are we supporting that in Des Moines? No, not necessarily. Although it is mixed and it's divided. Counties are supposed to have home rule also. So can counties stop any of these CAFOs? No. On and on and on, you go on and on and on. So people really talk a really good game about local control, but they have no idea what home rule means or any of that. And you know, and then we get involved with the backfill and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it really is a buzzword, and nobody really listens to it. So we changed it completely. We're doing assessments for schools. Schools have home rule. We passed some legislation last year, which I thought was goofy, but we passed something in theory for home rule for schools. But do we tell them when the school start date is? Certainly we tell them when the school start date is. We tell them when the assessment is, what assessment we're going to do? Yes. Do we do this? Do we do that? Yeah, of course. So home rule really is never, it's just a buzzword and it doesn't really exist in Des Moines.
Dale McCrae, the most popular guy in the county is the county assessor. And I do not raise your taxes, I just set the values. But the issue about the CAFOs, one of the things that we, the supervisors especially, have been pushing is the ag formula where agricultural property is based on its values on productivity, but it excludes all animal units. So in essence, you can build $1 million CAFO, and in the next assessment cycle, that gets absorbed back into the ag land formula, and the counties do not get any extra funds for that building. It's absorbed into their formula, which does not include any animal units. So, and I know it's a controversial situation with Farm Bureau. Do you see any possibility of revising the ag land calculation formula?
No, not with this current legislature as it's constituted.
Of the 29 senators on the Republican side and in the Senate, 13 of them are farmers. There's your effort right there.
To your specific question, Dale, you're speaking Japanese. I'm not afraid to answer any question. I think you all know that, but if you will email me your question, I'm open to things. I just don't know enough about formulas and your world to answer that confidently.
Property taxes on that is very complicated.
Okay. No, please email me. I'll be happy to submit an answer.
Well, I know a few things, and one of it is that we're running out of time, so legislators, please give your final remarks.
I started off talking about how much I respect Senator Dvorsky, and I'm going to continue that, but also gently push back against some of the things that my good friend said. I do not believe, for me, that local control is a buzzword. I think I put my money where my mouth is. And when you've got a county, and this is a county that I represent, Johnson County, that is openly hostile, and there are current members of the Board of Supervisors who, and I quote, would like to see every CAFO in the county shut down, end quote. That violates people's ability to perform commerce. So I believe my thoughts, while he disagrees with me, are consistent based on the extreme, far, wild, radical left views that some people in my lovely county have. Traffic cameras, because I believe there is a constitutional component, that's why I caveated that there are exceptions to my local control beliefs when I believe it impedes on your constitutional right to face your accuser when you're accused of a crime. I did vote no on the school start date, and I was the only Republican to vote no on preemption. So local control is very important to me, and so I wanted to make sure that I articulated my gentle, friendly disagreement with my senator, that I believe that is very important. And then finally, I want to close with, I chair the the Government Oversight Committee. We're in the final stages of making a recommendation on the ICN fiasco, and I know that people have emailed me from Muscatine and asked, the guy that stole $380,000 of your tax dollars, he's in a vegetative state. So it's making things a lot more difficult, but he was found with 2 trailers full of media equipment bought with your money at his house. He was putting it on eBay. It's an incredible act of arrogance that I've never quite seen in my time in government, but we are working to make sure that we pass reforms this week in oversight that will prevent the next bad actor from doing it, since we can't hold this guy, literally we cannot hold him accountable. So thank you for having me. I will not be here in April, but I will always be attentive to the best of my abilities. If you have concerns, reach out to me. individually.
Thank you all for being here on this beautiful Saturday morning. For 43 years as a retail pharmacist, I've been a patient advocate, and I will continue to be that whether I have my title as state senator or 100% retired. But I do want you to know that I take my time on the Health and Human Services Board very seriously. The MCO issues are very real. They need to be addressed, whether it's domestic health, mental illness, the disaster for our, I'm certainly at odds with our Senate leadership on that issue alone. And I think it's just got to be addressed. When the providers are being not paid for their services, it boils down to the patients being hurt, and service to those patients is being neglected. And we just cannot stand for that. We are a compassionate state. We care for our neighbors as much as we care for our family. So we need to step up and right the wrong on that issue. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you all, and thank you for the interesting questions today. And thank you for Representative Kaufman for straightening the record there.
Just on control.
I said, yeah, local control in the legislature, not necessarily Representative Kaufman. So, and anyway, all sorts of interesting questions today. What I'm worried about in the Iowa Senate, especially this year, I don't know why this year, but it just seems like, and this is no reflection on individual members, but the Senate majority has really moved to the right this year, and the reference to the last two bills we passed with the tax bill and the heartbeat bill, these are really radical fringe ideas, and we're starting to look more like DC every day in the Iowa Senate, and you know, I love the Iowa Senate. I've been there a long, long time, since '94, and I really hate to see that all that go by the wayside with some of these things that are going on. And I think the only answer is the election in 2018. So everyone who's here, you know, pay attention to who's running for governor, pay attention to who's running statewide office for Congress and House and Senate, and please get out and vote. Thank you.
And I have two final things. The first thing is we traditionally recognize candidates for the legislature. Laura, raise your hand. Laura Legis is running for the House seat currently occupied by Representative Carlson. You may talk to her after you're done if you're interested. The other thing is that next month I'm going to be out of town, and Ms. Sue Johansson, raise your hand, Sue, will be our new, at least taking my place, and be nice to her as you've been nice to me, okay?
Both we like her better.
Okay, be nicer to her than you've been to me.